On this episode of Retro Car Guy 530, I'm going to check out the Lume Cube Strobe anti-collision light for drones. I purchased this to comply with the US FAA requirement to have an anti-collision light on a drone that's visible at 3 or plus statute miles from the drone. So I'm going to check out the strobe light itself, the covers, the adhesive technology being used. I'm going to see how much it actually weighs. That's why I have the scale here when I add it to my DJI Mini 2 drone. And then I'm going to talk about how I'm going to need to move it from drone to drone, or I would like to, and what additional products you might need to purchase to accomplish that task. So let's get into it. I want to obtain an anti-collision light to put on my drone to fly during the civil twilight periods of 30 minutes before sunrise and the 30 minutes after sunset. And also with the upcoming changes to the FAA requirements no longer requiring a Part 107 certificate holder like myself to obtain a waiver, the 107.29 waiver, to fly at night, I want to make sure I satisfy the requirements for lighting, which include the anti-collision light on the drone that's visible for 3 or more statute miles. And according to Lume Cube, this particular product does meet that requirement. It's supposed to be visible 360 degrees at 3 or more statute miles. And the device itself is weatherproof according to the manufacturer. It does include this little rubber cap on the end where the charge port is located. And it's a micro USB. They do include the cable for that here. So that's included in the box. So then when you're done charging, you put the rubber cap back in place to make sure it stays waterproof. The switch and lens is on the top here. It's clear. Of course, we have the red and green covers for that, if you would like to make them produce red or green flashing or light from the unit. And then on the bottom, it documents the battery and power information. It has a 140 milliamp hour battery. Of course, the input is the micro USB cable that goes into it. So it's a type A to micro USB to charge the unit. And then it has the product logo, and then we have some other marking for certifications. And you are not to put this in the trash. You need to recycle it when you're done using it. To use the product, you can simply press it quickly and it will flash twice if it's fully charged. To turn the unit on, you press and hold for 3 seconds. And then it will go into the fast strobe mode. You can press again and it'll go a longer strobe there. And you can go where it's on steady. And then you press again and it'll go back to the fast strobe mode. And then to turn it off, you press and hold for 3 seconds as well. So that's the product itself. And the adhesive product that they supply, the 3M Dual Lock, half of it is installed on the bottom of the strobe itself. And then the other part of that is then put on the drone. And I have purchased some additional 3M Dual Lock to correspond to this. This is the 250 pin density version of it for outdoor use, and I want to be able to mount this on top of my Mini 2, my Skydio 2, and my Mavic Pro, so I want to make sure that I can move it from drone to drone. It doesn't include any extras in the box, which would be nice going forward if they included 1 or 2 of these in addition, or at least 1 more. That way you could use it's the same product on either side, so just 1 more pair of these would really be a nice addition. And it looks like these are hand cut because they're very rough shaped. They're not exactly precision cut, so it looks like someone's hand cutting these, at least my opinion. But that's the way it's secured, and we'll talk about that, how it factors into the weight of the overall product. So again, to make it produce green light, you would then, there's a recess in here to go over where the there we go. And then if you want to see it flash, let's turn it back on. So that's the cover, so you can make it green or red. Pull that back off gently. There we go. So that's the product. You have again the USB cable here to charge it through the end charging port cap. And that's pretty much it. Of course, you can have the white with no cover, red or green. the multiple light modes, it is a weight of 10 grams, which is kind of a concern when it comes to the Mini 2. If you're a recreational flyer, one thing I wanted to point out here that the addition of this actually pushes my drone to the 250 gram limit, which means it does require registration. I do have to register the drone anyway because I'm a Part 107 certificate holder and I'll be using it for commercial purposes. But a recreational flyer needs to keep the weight of the drone under 250 grams to make sure you don't have to register the drone. And it's the weight at takeoff time. It's not the weight as sold by the manufacturer, it's the weight at takeoff time. So I wanted to go through and weigh the Mini 2 with all of this on there and illustrate the fact that it is that heavy. Now, the first thing people will probably ask is the scale accurate? So let's turn on the scale here and get it zeroed out. I have some certification weights here. This is 100 grams, 200 grams, and then this is 50. So this is the 250 gram limit for flying or registering a drone. 250 or more, you do have to register. Let's put another 20 on there, it should be 270. And you can see the scale appears to be at least within 1 gram of being fully accurate. So I have to agree, or I have to state that it appears that whatever it displays should be accurate for FAA registration determination. Let's take that back off. And let's bring in my Mini 2 drone. I have taken the gimbal guard off. It's basically just the drone minus the battery, and it's ready to take off except for inserting the battery into it. So let's go ahead and set it on the scale, and we're at 159 grams, just the Mini 2 itself. And I have the Fly More combo, and the batteries all produce this, or add the same amount of weight, so let's go ahead and add that on here. And we're at 238 grams, 39, usually it settles out at 239. So then let's add the Lume Cube Strobe itself. The total weight stated in the documentation is 10. So if that were accurate, we would never go over the 249. So let's add the Lume Cube itself without the adhesive pads. That's 248. So that's 9 grams. And then let's go ahead and let's put these two together so they don't slide around. And just add that on there. We're at 250 grams. This would require the person that owns this drone to register it with the FAA. So if you're a recreational flyer and you're purchasing the Lume Cube Strobe, you need to be aware that depending on your particular Mini 2, mine seems to be about 1 gram heavier than my friend's Mini 2. So his overall weight might be 249, but my overall weight is 250 with everything as supplied by Lume Cube. I've tried to find some alternative versions of the, is there a way to trim down the dual lock product to get it under, and even with that smaller size, comparing the two here, you can see it's smaller. Now that seems to be holding at 249. Let's see if I move it around a little bit. So that's one approach potentially, that you would have to trim it down to stay underweight. At least my particular drone, that might work, but then it reduces the contact surface. So that's one approach. There is a different version of the dual lock that's 170 pin count. And when I add that, that stays under the 250 max requirements. It's 249. But I've tried a couple different approaches to stay under 250. And again, if we go back to the original one supplied, it settles out at 250 grams. So that's a concern potentially if you're following the letter of the FAA requirements. If you're a recreational flyer and this is the takeoff weight of your drone, you would have to register it with the FAA. Over the next couple of days, I'm going to try to get some footage of this up in the air with the Lume Cube Strobe on it during the several twilight periods to see how bright it is. It should be pretty visible based on everything I've seen so far. And also considering the weight issue, if you're trying to add anything like if you want to run your drone during the day with Lume Cube Strobe on it for extra visibility, and again, the weight for registration, if that's your concern as a recreational flyer, and you're trying to add, let's say, a neutral density filter or CPL filter on the front, on the camera lens, this is about 1 gram in itself. So you have very little weight to work with as far as making sure that you're under the 250 gram limit. So keep that in mind as you're figuring out your configuration and whether it's the right thing for you. I wanted to test out the visibility of the Lume Cube Strobe on my DJI Mini 2, so during a recent civil twilight period, I started a flight about 19 minutes after that start of the civil twilight period. I elevated the Mini 2 to about 10 feet AGL, above ground level. You can see the Mini 2 there in the picture with the Lume Cube Strobe in the center, just slightly forward of the center point. The green status LED flashing in the rear, and the front LED is set to red strobing mode. I now have the Mini 2 about 40 feet away from the initial takeoff location in 40 AGL. As it crosses the 50 AGL barrier, I start to lose sight of the Lume Cube Strobe itself. I still see the green status LED flashing on the rear of the drone, which is facing away from me at this point, and at 60 AGL I just don't see the Lume Cube Strobe any longer. As I bring down the elevation of the drone, again, the Lume Cube Strobe is visible to the remote pilot in command or any visual observer. So if you're using this as a visibility aid for the remote pilot in command or a visual observer, keep in mind that it's only going to be useful up to about 40 or 50 AGL for the Mini 2. If you need additional lighting, if you're using it with a different drone and you can place additional lights, that might be the way to go. But on the top, where I've placed it on the Mini 2, it's just not going to be a great visual aid. Anything above 40 or 50 AGL above the point of the remote pilot and command or visual observer. So we have another test at 60 AGL, of course, with the Lume Cube Strobe placed on the top of the Mini 2. This is about 5 to 7 minutes after the previous test, a little bit darker during the civil twilight period. Still can't see the Lume Cube Strobe, so the visibility sphere of where you can see it is limited to about 40 or 50 feet below the drone. And of course the objective here is to have a strobe light to make any manned aircraft be able to see the drone. So any aircraft at that level or slightly below the drone or certainly above will definitely see the drone up to 3 statute miles away. But as we decrease the elevation here, you can see the Lume Cube Strobe again and then the other blinking lights on the drone itself. And at this elevation, you can, in darkness, you can begin to see the flashing of the light on the building from the Lume Cube Strobe. I wanted to run a quick test today to see what the number of satellites are that it can receive with the Lume Cube Strobe on and off of the drone. Right now it's off, and I have 20, it looks like 20 satellites. I wanted to get it up in the air for about 50 feet, check that same number, bring it back down. Then I'm going to put the Lume Cube Strobe on it, look at the number at the same landing pad location, and then up 50 feet and back down to see if the placement of the Lume Cube Strobe where I have it on the Mini 2 is satisfactory not to interfere with the GPS reception. So right now we looks like we're at 20. Yeah, it looks like 20 some, 20 if I read that correctly, yes, 20. So let's go ahead and launch the drone. And I want to make sure that the RPIC, the remote pilot in command, can safely assume that the GPS reception is going to be able to not be interfered with when the Lume Cube Strobe is installed, that the electronics in that is not going to interfere with the reception on the drone. So let's get it up in the air. We're at 20 right now on the ground. Let's get it up.
Take off.
Checking for planes. No birds. I think we're ready to go. All right, let's get it up in the air.
The home point has been updated. Please check it on the map.
We're at 22 satellites. We're at 41 feet. There's 52, 51, 50 feet. Turn on the camera here while we're up there. Looks like we're at 22 or 23. It fluctuates between 22 and 23 satellites at this point with that elevation. I'm going to do a rotation just to make sure that it doesn't change based on its orientation. So let's go ahead and do that. "24 satellites, 26. "26. 27. And we've done a full 360. And we're at 27 satellites being received by the GPS receiver in the Mini 2. So let's go ahead and bring that back down, put the Lume Cube Strobe on it, and see what it looks like with that on it. Landing. And back down on the ground here, we're at 19 to 21, so we can see the elevation, and given the home that I'm standing next to, things are interfering with the satellite reception down on the ground. That's why I wanted to check both elevations. So now I have the Lume Cube Strobe here. Let's make sure that the charge port is fully plugged again. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. Not that I'm going to be able to see it, but it might be a better, more highly visible with anything above the drone at that point, just in case. So let's get it snapped on. So let's just let that stabilize for a moment while we're on the ground. And it looks like we're still at 19 satellites so far. I'll give about 10 more seconds here to see what it looks like. Seems like we're holding at that, so right now it's not interfering with the number of satellites because we were getting 19 to 20. And that's about what we're doing, 19 to 20 at this point. All right, let's check our surroundings again. We're clear. All right, let's get it up in the air.
Take off. The home point has been updated. Please check it on the map.
Up in the air at my eye elevation, we're back up to 21 satellites. And that's 4.6 feet from its takeoff location, 4.9 feet. All right. Let's go ahead and bring it up. And we're at 21 satellites. So let's bring it up to the 50-foot elevation again. (42) 50 foot. There we go. All right, let's let that settle out there for just a moment. And we're getting 26 to 27 satellites still, like we did last time. So the Lume Cube Strobe itself is not interfering with the GPS signal reception with the placement on the drone in the location that I applied the 3M dual lock pad. So let's do that full rotation again. We're at 79% battery. So we're good there. Still 27 satellites. (26, 27). A 3 to 4 mile breeze is going on right now up there. 27 satellites. And 26, 27. And it looks like the hummingbirds are getting a little interested in the noise it's making, so let's bring it back down. And we're at 26 and 27 satellites still, so looks like it has not interfered with the GPS reception on the Mini 2. So that's a good sign. I want to make sure that its placement didn't interfere and reduce the accuracy of the GPS location tracking and positioning just by the placement of that particular device, and it doesn't seem to. So let's bring it back down. There we go. Oh, bring it down. Well, that completes the test of the DJI Mini 2 with the Lume Cube Strobe installed. I didn't see any impact by the Lume Cube Strobe being installed on the drone on the satellite reception count. On the ground, it was 19 to 20, had 50 foot AGL. It was 26 to 27. I did the full 360 rotation. That number stayed consistent, 26 to 27. With the Lume Cube on the drone or with it off the drone, it stayed the same. So it looks like it doesn't impact the reception, especially where I placed it. I wanted to verify I didn't impact the functionality of the drone as far as GPS reception, and I wanted to make sure I was able to maintain good control. It didn't seem to offset anything. It didn't give me any warnings about overweight or in payload mode or anything. It seemed to be okay where I placed it. And as what I found earlier in that section where I weighed the drone with the Lume Cube and found that it pushed my particular drone to 250 grams. This one, if you were a recreational pilot, you would have to register it, and because remember, the weight is at takeoff time, not when you purchase it or the original weight of the drone. It's as equipped when you have it at takeoff, and this one as equipped is 250 grams. So keep that in mind if you're buying a light like this for your anti-collision purposes to meet the FAA requirement to fly during civil twilight or at night, especially with the changes coming up in the rules for night flying on March 1st, 2021. So hopefully with that, you found that this video is helpful to you. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hit that bell notification to be notified when I upload new videos to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy flying!